look into all of the sustainable development goals. Now, some are very defined, obviously, like education, housing is very clear. There are others, health, of course. There are others that are a little bit of a hybrid of one or two committees, but there is no committee that really looks into the interaction of all these different areas of concern. And that is really what I hope that we can all do together. And I really do hope that we are productive in the 3 years that we have to work together. So I really appreciate your being here today and taking time. And we're sorry for the last minute change uh, of the schedule from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. But in the months to come, we hope to be able to have somewhat of a regular schedule so that those of you who, like Neda, will be attending often, um, you can also put it into your schedule. So anyway, our jurisdiction is all matters relating to the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The committee shall assess the status and performance of the Philippines in attaining these goals and shall propose policies, strategies, and actions to develop desirable futures by using a multidisciplinary approach in illuminating possibilities, outlining policy choices, and ascertaining alternatives or futures thinking. So I'm hoping that you will all be able to consider this a safe space to discuss a lot of issues. Out of curiosity, have any of you attended my hearings before? No one? Okay. So my hearings are, have you? Okay. Sorry? E-cigarettes, okay. So I like to conduct my hearing in a very interactive way. Of course, due to time constraints, many times I will have to put a time limit, but it doesn't mean that we cannot continue discussing. And obviously, if there is something that is glaring or even controversial, feel free to raise your hand so I know that you have a concern on that, and whether I can give you the time then and there or not, at least it's noted, and be sure I or my staff take note of that because our intention really is to have a free-flowing discussion. On that note, dapat friends tayong lahat dito, okay? Bihira ho akong magalit, nagagalit lang ako dun sa sinabi ko ng wag, tapos tuloy pa rin. So, simple lang naman yung rules ko. Yun nga, I want to have a nice interactive discussion. Reminder that we were all brought up with good manners and right conduct. So, ako, sinusundan ko yan. So, expect everybody here. No rolling of eyeballs and things like that, which yung topic naman natin is not the type, but you never know, no? Because over the next few months, we will have deep discussions and there may be turf issues and things like that. Pero walang ganun, di ba? Just raise your hand and like to hear your point of views, pero wala nang overacting. Um, let's also practice sustainability within the confines of this room. So, yun nga, yung tubig nyo, we gave notice and the dispenser is over there. And if you have other suggestions, I'm in good company, so we welcome your suggestions. Um, the good practice have to begin in our own home. So let's start it now. If you have anything else to recommend, we are very open. In the agenda today is the progress report of the Philippines on UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Who's delivering that? Kayo, ma'am. Okay. The team. All right. I also note that this week, world leaders have gathered in New York for the UN General Assembly and discussed various issues with a special focus on climate change. In fact, I was going to say, is it all the major, I think all the major international publications, yun yung focus nila, no? Time, the economy. So, can we be sure I have a copy, by the way? And prior to this, the youth also made themselves heard and demanded that urgent action be taken. The World Economic Forum is simultaneously conducting Sustainable Development Impact Summit on September 23 and 24 to engage leaders across business, government, civil society, NGOs, and academia to collaborate and address the world's most pressing problems. So we know that that's going on. Noted. Um, okay. So if you've come with position papers, I always request that you don't read it to me, especially if they're long, because it's better that I read that on my own. I've only allocated around an hour and a half for this session today. So just highlight the important points. Neda, you need to take your time though. So kayo yung main. So I don't want to rush you. But I don't mind that you read a portion, highlight it, and tell them that there's more details there. If I really need you right then and there to expand on what you're saying, then I'll ask you. But let's be conscious of, like, how many speakers do we plan to have today? Three. No, no, speakers. How many speakers? Three. Okay, I thought you said 3%. Percenter. So three. Oh, so mukhang marami naman tayong time kung gano'n, no? But kayo na lang bahala mag-time, okay? Kayo na, hindi ko naisipin yan. Okay. All right, that's it. When Senator Tolentino joins me, I'll ask him to help me with some procedural matters. So until then, I think we can proceed. I understand that Director Mary Ann Daraway, is that right? Daraway, and Dr. Aubrey Tabuga. Okay, you'll present jointly, something like that? Okay, so the floor is yours. You can figure out how you want to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Senator. At the onset, of course, we would like to thank you and the committee for this opportunity to share what we have done so far with the Sustainable Development Goals. This is not exclusive to NEDA, but this is, of course, in partnership with our other stakeholders and also our development partners who are also here in this session. The outline of my presentation will be as follows. We will have an overview of the agenda, the integration of the SDGs in Ambisyon 2040 and the Philippine Development Plan, which most of us already know, but we will have a quick brief only on that one. And then, of course, the emphasis on the Sustainable Consumption and Production Action Plan, which is actually in addressing SDG 12, and then the monitoring of the SDGs, how we are going about it, and what we intend to do, and then a glimpse of what legislative agenda or how we are treating the legislative agenda in the Philippine Development Plan and the challenges and ways forward. Given that, the brief history on the Sustainable Development Goals, you can see in the slide that in 1972, the UN Conference on Human Environment was conducted and stated that in our time, man's capability to transform his surroundings, if used wisely, can bring to all peoples the benefit of development and opportunity to enhance the quality of life. Here, the emphasis, of course, was basically the environment. And then, since then, a number of important milestones have taken place with regards to the sustainable consumption and production as follows. The 1987 UN World Commission on Environment and Development, the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development, the 2003 launch of the Marrakesh Process on Sustainable Consumption and Production, and 2012 UN Conference on Sustainable Development Rio Plus 20, and the 2015 United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in 2015, where the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, including Goal 12, which is the SCP. Sorry. Next slide.
Ma'am,
Sorry.
may I ask that you give me a summary in writing
Yes,
of what was the goal per
each of the milestones.
yeah, each of, what do you call them, assembly, or and sometimes there's a reason. I
Yes.
like knowing the history so that
Yes.
you kind of understand
Okay.
why it evolved in that way. So you can just submit that to us when it's ready.
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, if there's a paper that's written to it, then just give me that paper.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, individual papers for each of the summits.
Hindi, wag
But
ngayon.
there is a
I have to be
summarized.
realistic. I will not have time to read.
Yes.
Diba? Summary of each, and
Yes,
if there's
yes,
an
of
interesting
course.
note as to what was
What
the
was,
big
yeah.
transition. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So in September 2000, however, UN member states, including the Philippines, convened for the MDGs. As you all know, the Millennium Summit in the UN headquarters was conducted then. Here, the leaders of the member states committed to reduce poverty and the worst forms of human deprivation in their own countries. They adopted the MDGs, or the Millennium Development Goals, and there were only 8. There were only 19 MDG targets as well, and there were only 60 indicators. To give you a comparison, we have the next slide. From the MDGs, you can see that
Yes.
there are only 8 and now we have 17. So the next slide will show you that the number of goals in the MDG were 8, while the Sustainable Development Goals have 17. The number of targets, we have 21, and we have 169 in the SDGs. The number of indicators, we had only 60, but now globally, there is 232 indicators. The general scope or focus of the MDGs was social, while for the SDGs, the focus now is economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. And the target countries were development countries in the MDGs, particularly the poorest, but this time the entire world, rich and poor. And the formulation was produced by a group of experts in the MDGs, and the indicators actually were prescribed. While here in the SDGs, this was as a result of consultations, a consultation process among 193 UN member states, civil society, and other stakeholders. Since 2015, it has been 4 years after. We only have 11 years left, but we still have the commitment to achieve the goals, the 17 goals, 169 targets, and consider the 232 indicators. Just to emphasize the difference between the MDGs and the 2030 agenda is that the 2030 agenda integrates the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, namely environment, society, and the economy. It also emphasizes that the environmental dimension must be always given the highest priority. It also states that the SDGs are indivisible because the targets are interconnected. That is, each target is predecessor and contributes to the attainment of the other targets. The following areas intersect with with the other goals: sustainable consumption and production, inequality, poverty, growth, and unemployment. Gender equality may be observed also as an accelerator in achieving other goals, such as education, poverty, and inequality. The thickest links are between gender equality, education, and between poverty and inequality.
Sorry, what was that statement you made?
The thickest lines.
Thickest.
Yeah, the links.
Okay, can you repeat it?
The thickest links are between gender equality
yeah.
and education, as well as between poverty and inequality. So that's
Okay, sige.
the
I'll ask you to
illustration
elaborate
po.
on that later on.
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes. So, and then the most interconnected SDG is the goal on sustainable consumption and production, because it enables the most interconnected. Is goal 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, on sustainable consumption
Okay.
and production.
Okay.
It enables people everywhere to live a good quality of life within the fair share of our own planet's resources. So with the integrated nature of the SDGs, they call for cross-sectoral engagement with relevant stakeholders and greater policy coherence in consideration of the 3 dimensions of sustainable development. Again, the approach is commonly called the whole of society approach. It requires a sector approach involving multi-sector stakeholders, unlike the MDGs before that adopted a silo approach. It also provides opportunities for cross-fertilization. Looking at how the SDGs are implemented, so that we do not look at a separate plan for SDGs, we have already embedded the SDGs in the entire Philippine Development Plan, specifically for 2017 to 2022, but also includes the alignment to our Ambisyon Natin 2040, which is our long-term vision. It is, of course, the Ambisyon Natin 2040 is, of course, the collective vision and aspirations of the Filipino people for themselves and for the country up to 2040. And as you can see, there are 4 administrative uh, development plans, no, 6-year medium-term plans that are going to help attain the ambition. So the current PDP is the first of the 4 medium-term development plans till we reach 2040.
May I just
Yes,
acknowledge the presence of Senator Tolentino? He's actually hearing already my sustainable cities, and
yeah.
I'm really happy that he was able to come by because he also has his own schedule. So just for administrative matters, let me take advantage of his presence. I just need him to second to move, no? So
Chair,
yes,
I support the motion to adopt Rule 5, Section 5 of our rules to govern the procedure of this committee.
there's not
I
hearing
so move.
any no objections. The pertinent rules of the Senate, as mentioned, Resolution Number 5, governing increase in aid of legislation, are hereby adopted. Thank you. That's it? That's the only resolution? May isa pa. Oh, so dalawa ba yun? O, paulit na lang.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the pertinent rules of the Senate, Rules 10, 11, and Resolution Number 5 to govern the procedures of this committee. I so move.
Yes, hearing no objections, hereby adopted. Thank you. So, Director Darawal was just saying that the SDGs are now um, embedded in the Philippine Development Plan. That's what I wanted to hear talaga kasi baka sayang naman sa oras natin kung hindi, no? So, and while Senator Tolentino is still here, bato ko na yung question ko sa inyo. Um, you know, in other countries, Bhutan for one, 'di ba? It was big news at gross national happiness. And there's a big chance that I'll be able to visit the Denmark Institute of Happiness. So I wanted to know saan pumapasok dyan sa goals. And it's also an individual personal study that I'm making. And then, di ba, there are these studies that Filipinos naman are one of the happiest, di ba? But the general conclusion is that um, material wealth does not affect happiness for so long as your basic needs are met. So it is relevant if you do not have food on the table, if you do not have decent housing, you know. But once that these basic needs are met, and this is consistent with my work in my other committee on ways and means, now that we have enough revenues to provide for the basic needs of everyone, then we should be able to move into that mode where basic needs are met, and it's not really material wealth, but it's the comforts of life. So I just want to park that there, and you can answer my question as we go along. Thank you.
And I
Senator
think you
Tolentino,
will,
please
yeah.
feel free anytime to
Sige po.
interject.
Chair,
Anytime.
just one perhaps relevant question for me, being the chair of the Committee on Housing. During my recent hearing, I don't know, I can't recognize your names kung nandun kayo. We acknowledge that for the housing sector, there is a Ambisyon 2040 plan uh, embedded, I believe, in the PDP plan. And one of the goals of the newly created Department of Human Settlements and Housing. But my problem is this. Apparently, I have a feeling that because of the housing backlog that we have now, 5.67 million homes, once we reach that date of 2040, the backlog would be 20 million homes. Because the real goal, insofar as this plan is concerned, is to have one home per Filipino household. But apparently, because of the backlog, we are now pushing the goalpost, so to speak, because it's not realistic that we will be able to achieve the targets. So is this Ambition 2040 or whatever umbrella plans we have a very fluid plan wherein you can move the goalpost, the benchmark, so to speak, if you are not uh, able to attain the target. So bakit ganon? So how do you, I'm sure NEDA, as the head agency here, should have a continuing monitoring, uh, advisement, structure, inform the various government agencies. Apparently, you're not reaching your targets. You have to double time, etc., etc. How do we address this failure of some government agencies to meet their targets? Madam Chair, Director Mary Ann probably would speak.
Sir, thank you, sir. Actually, in addressing the backlogs, we do have the cluster committees already addressing where the should or this hood is already a member agency in the planning committees as well. And we've called their attention already on the same plane where you are coming from. And they're supposed to have prepared already their development plan, I think. So which we are relatively going through at the moment and including already in our updating of the Philippine Development Plan because we are in the process of the midterm update and hopefully we will be able to, as you said, speed up, no? Speed up. But in terms of monitoring and checking, probably we can also include in our systems how we are going to double check the accomplishments of the other agencies, although the system of government is through the budget process pa rin po.
No, I mentioned that, Madam Chair, is I mentioned the word advisement. In your process of monitoring all those government agencies, whether they're complying or not, is there a possibility of you providing the advisement? For instance, you're monitoring the malnutrition rate of young children. Is there a possibility of you providing some innovative advice, perhaps to the uh, Nutrition Council of the Philippines, the DOST, and the Philippine Coconut Authority, that perhaps because of our excess copra and the low prices of copra, the coconut milk can be used as a substitute for cow's milk for malnourished children to achieve our SGD goal insofar as health and malnutrition is concerned. And in houses, for instance, in the housing sector, if I may pursue this line of thinking, can there be an advisement coming from NEDA that perhaps you can utilize indigenous materials coming from Iloilo, bamboo, etc., to provide for low-cost housing to meet that goal of having one home per Filipino. So what I'm saying, Madam Chair, is this. Hindi po siguro dapat remind lang si NEDA o kayong mga agency kayo, kulang na kayo sa kilos. Dapat siguro NEDA, being at the forefront of this endeavor, should provide some innovative and creative advices on how that particular agency could meet the target. PNR, DOTR, transportation, sustainable transportation. Perhaps NEDA can advise, DOTR, CDOST, gumawa na ng locally made trains. Bakit hindi yan ang bilhin nyo? Available na dito. Di ba? So NEDA being at the helm of all of this, should be able to formulate measures that will provide details on how we can egg the other agencies to act so that we will be able to meet the 2040 target. Can we do that, Director Marian?
Sir, we will note this and bring it up to the planning committees.
And you have field offices, you have
Yes,
researchers. So I think a lot of things can emanate from your office
Yes, sir.
insofar as the details on how we can achieve this long-term vision of Ambition 2040
Okay.
sa DTI, sa health sector, yung dengue, gumagawa pala yung DOST ng anti-dengue kit.
Tools. Yeah.
So, sayang eh.
Opo.
Sayang, ma'am, kanina I attended a budget hearing of the PCOO. Ang sinasabi ng PTB4, wala silang mga contracts, kaya kulang yung budget nila. Pero they forgot that we will be hosting the Southeast Asian Games. And that could have been a good opportunity to generate additional revenue, di ba? So this is a side matter. Ibig ko sabihin, we just have to be innovative and creative enough to let the government be more proactive and at the same time achieve all those milestones that we are hoping that to achieve.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam
very
Chair.
much for your suggestions, sir. Thank you. Duly
With
noted.
the recommendations of Senator Tolentino, I will have my staff talk directly with your chief of staff to block off your schedule to attend all our Sustainable Development Goal Committee hearings,
Yeah.
because your input is very,
Very
very
important,
much
yeah.
appreciated. Just to add to that, I think specifically, Director, and I'll will really ask for a reply by in a week's time, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I take his recommendations very seriously, and I'd
Right.
like to know exactly how you intend to reply to that. Like, if there are limitations and we need to empower, we need to create, we will. Of course, ano naman tayo, hindi naman natin objective dito create tayo ng another body, create ng another body, but that is the purpose of this committee.
Yes.
Not just to look at the data, but then to turn it into action. No? And I'm pretty sure you all, I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm pretty sure you all appreciate that. To add lang to the observation and recommendation of Senator Tolentino, NEDA actually sits on the board of the state universities and colleges, which I also did when I was chairman of the Committee on Education. So again, there's a wealth of information there. And I have to say, with all due respect, and Noel is here, he's, well, a lot of my chief of staff, si Noel, a lot of them sat in the board on my behalf. I can't really say that I was impressed with ideas coming from NEDA. I may have missed a few, so don't take it as a general, don't take it as my only. Well, it is my only observation, but I may be wrong. Let's put it that way. It may not be an accurate observation, but yun yung point, di ba? Kaya nga nandun si Nede. Sana may naalala man lang akong input eh. So, baka naman meron. So, hindi naman sa ano, pero let's take note of that. Can you also tell your NEDA representatives na they're there for a reason, to really be able to use the wealth of information that NEDA has and to contribute that to the discussion in the board and to get something out of it. Hindi lang to vote yes, no, hindi lang yun. No, so to make it more vibrant. Okay, so I'll give the floor back to you, ma'am.
Very much, ma'am. Actually, I'm going to add on to that one. Actually, when I was in that board as well with Sir Noel, tawag na po sa amin actually berdugo because we keep on questioning them. Yeah. Oo.
Pero yun nga, and then after that,
Yes.
what happens, di ba?
Yes.
So, given, baka
But
naman by the
still-
time yung ibang naupuan ko, ako yung question ng question, so baka
Opo,
tumahimik
opo.
lang ng konti yung kasama kong taga-NEDA doon. That's why I said, yun lang
Hindi
naman
nga.
yung ano.
One thing I can
But maybe you
attribute.
can also give us a report
Yeah, sure.
na what are all those
Yes, initiatives.
observations you had in the
Mhm.
SUCs? Because in
Opo.
the same way that Senator Tolentino mentioned,
Mhm.
si DOST may ganito,
Mhm.
sa ganitong probinsya may ganito, ganun din naman yung mga SUC.
Tama.
Ang dami na rin nilang
Tama po.
information,
Lalo
resources,
na R&D.
etc.
Tapos yun po, ang pwede ko lang pong masabing more positive that came out with the interventions probably of NEDA being in the board is the SUCs now are looking into the land use planning of their own universities. So yun lang po so far which we can confidently say and influence na po namin sila. Kasi sa daming question natin, medyo nag-isip na.
Ang napansin ko, minsan nag-post ka ng question, madalas, wala namang sagot kasi 3 months later magkikita, tapos yung nasa agenda nila, kung ano-anong importante, na importante naman, and then nakalimutan na yung mga
Yung mga
questions that you pointed.
agreements
That's why I
pati
would be very
questions.
interested in
Okay.
finding out what were these observations that you made.
Okay po. Sige po, we will give you the same information. I have also information that we have a study of NEDA on about the happiness index, that there is a quality of life index.
Madam Chair, is this
Sorry
similar
po.
to Bhutan or you devise your own?
I think it was devised because it's supposed to be the index that will monitor the ambition. So probably it was retrofitted for Philippine setting.
Because
I-confirm ko na lang po. Oo. Yes, yes.
Madam Chair, while going here, I was able to read an article. To prevent your anger, you have to smile before you dial a phone.
La phone ngayon.
Bago pa mag-text.
Sige, thank you po.
Maganda yung tinanong din ni Senator
Yes.
Tolentino. Di tayo makakaandar nito kasi masyado tayong maraming common interest eh. Pero
Oo nga po.
yung tinanong niya na, is that tailor fit sa Philippines? I think that's very relevant because
Sige po.
I read this study on happiness,
index,
no,
yeah.
ranking 10 different countries.
Right.
And their perception of happiness are all very different. Like in Bhutan, they have one of the worst water sanitation standards, the worst. And babies die from diarrhea. And yet they consider their happiness level very high. At this point, I would consider that very low, knowing that I can eat a decent meal and drink water in a bottle, tapos babies are dying, di ba? So, iba yung perception, kaya talagang kailangan naka-tailor sa,
Madam Chair, if Director Mary Ann can do something relative to traffic, congestion, make you smile.
We can, as far as we're concerned, we can strongly influence as best we can. But we will, we do through the infrastructure committees, etc. Social. Yeah, the happiness index was actually inspired by Bhutan. And then it is envisioned to complement measures of development such as GDP and GNI, the Gini index. Looking into the components of the Ambisyon Natin po. So hopefully, wala pa hong timeline, but it is ongoing po, the development of the quality of life index. I think PSA is also going to help us with this. Maybe.
So you're still developing that.
Yes po,
And then
it's
itetest
ongoing.
pa lang natin yon
No po, itetest
para
pa
meron
lang.
tayong
Opo.
what do you
Bibigyan po
call that?
namin kayo ng ng baseline. Opo.
Baseline.
Opo.
Anong time frame? Para naman
Ah,
tayo.
Wala pa ako. We have a time. 2020. The pilot daw will be finished by December 2019.
The pilot study or
Yes po.
so meron ng nag-survey na.
Baselining po.
So December.
Opo,
Okay.
so December.
All right. Okay.
So this can be very useful for you.
Yeah,
Sige,
definitely.
thank you po.
Madam Chair,
Traffic
we'll have the happiest province, the happiest city,
Yeah.
the happiest municipality, ganun ba? The happiest agency.
The happiest secretary. Or, sige po. So, if I may, this is actually just an illustration of how they are interconnected and aligned. And the next slide shows you how the SDGs are embedded in the PDP po. So, can you flash there? So, the goal for 2022 is to lay down the foundation for inclusive growth, a high trust and resilient society, and globally competitive knowledge economy. So, yun po, where SDG 1, about no poverty and no hunger, which is SDG 2, is aligned. And so on. I will not go through each of them. So, going into the most interconnected SDG, which is SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production, this action plan prepared for SDG 12 was meant to facilitate the implementation of the SCP in the country and to identify the means of implementation to cohesively and efficiently implement the programs and interventions such as the resource
Sorry,
conservation.
Mama.
Yes.
Just before you leave, can you just go back to the slide?
This
Yes,
one?
that one,
Yes,
oo.
one.
You know, I want to just make a recommendation, then just come back to me. I would like to see some kind of artwork, because this is, of course, a bit text heavy. No? It's a
Yes,
combination,
yes,
but it's still
yes.
fairly text heavy. We
Yeah.
should do something like a contest wherein we have local
Mhm.
artists, what do you call this, interpret this. And then it should be in every local government office.
Okay.
So that when DOH enters, it forces them to think of how they're coordinating with DOTR, MMDA about the traffic.
Okay.
When the Department of Education looks at it, it makes them think of decent jobs and whether their senior high programs are aligned with employment, are aligned with attaining our economic development plans, etc., etc. So that's kind of what I want to see because
Yes.
when I look at it, I'm inspired on the one hand and I'm depressed on the other hand because I don't know how many people outside of this room bother to think of their immediate um, concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So again, going to the SDG 12, the action plan will help us identify programs that will help us think about resource conservation, efficiency, and cleaner production, recycling, waste, and chemical management, and sustainable business and lifestyles. So the basis of this action plan, which is on the next slide, is through the scoping to assess the level of the SCP we are in. However, the findings of the assessment are as follows. Several policies and programs can serve as entry points towards establishing SCP, but constrained with ineffective implementation. There is absence of a deliberate monitoring of SCP and generation of relevant data. There is also limited studies and data on product life cycles, alternative packaging products, recycling and use of secondary raw materials, and existing policies and strategies that drive sustainable business and lifestyles, which are not always mandatory, and consumers tend to support cheap but unsustainable goods products due to the lack of information. So the next steps for this action plan is it to be finalized by October this year, following the process through the Philippine Council for Sustainable Development and the establishment of the subcommittee under the DBCC, the subcommittee on SDGs, and the rolling out of the plan in 2020 for integration in their programming and budgeting in the following year. Yes.
October is next month, no?
Yes
So a
po.
few weeks from now. I'll actually be traveling and hope to attend or meet with some experts on SDGs. And my personal favorite is actually goal number 12.
Ah, okay.
Kasi feeling ko talaga malaking,
Mm-mm.
I mean, aside
Sige
from
po.
the usual education, health, it's a given, no? But I'm interested in this. So if that final action plan is not available by next week, can you at least give me details on just more details on that outline
Yes.
so that I can also increase my knowledge and
Yes po.
understanding
Yes,
on
yes.
our own situation.
Okay, we'll give you a copy of even the draft
Sige.
action
And if
plan.
you also, actually my staff can just talk to you a little bit more detail on this. It's just that I intend to study on this during the October break when we don't have session. So
Sige po.
I'd like more info on that. Thank you.
It's available anyway, so we will
Okay.
give you a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And then on the monitoring of the SDGs, of course, as we said,
So, siya
if
ba
we
yun?
monitor the PDP, we monitor the SDGs already.
Oo.
So it is yearly monitored, the PDP, where we come up with a socio-economic report that
Okay.
talks about our socio-economic performance.
Okay.
We had two SERs already, or socio-economic reports, for 2017 and 2018, and this can be found po in our web. And then, of course, PSA will discuss further about the indicators as they will present after
Okay.
our presentation. And then just to give you a bird's eye view on what our institutional arrangements are for the SDG statistical development, we have the Philippines Statistical System Agencies composed of Philippine Statistics Authority, the Philippine Statistical Research and Training Institute, and other oversight agencies including NEDA, COA, even DBM, DOF, and almost all other agencies in the other Philippine Statistics System agencies. So the task of PSAs, of the tasks they have, are to serve as the official repository of the SDG indicators of the Philippines, develop mechanisms to generate and regularly provide timely and accurate statistics, develop and maintain a web page on SDGs, SDGI database, and SDG Watch. The Philippine Statistics Research and Training Institute undertakes capacity building activities to help PSA and other agencies generate the indicators and conduct methodological researches to address issues in generating SDG indicators. And the oversight agencies, of course, will provide all necessary assistance that will help generate the indicators that are identified and approved by the PSA, as well as the other PSA agencies, PSS agencies.
Chair, Madam Chair, my recommendation a while ago, where will you include that now? Enumerate resources and advice,
Initiative.
or
Uh-oh.
conduct capacity building activities and advice,
Opo.
methodological
Eh, meron
researches.
yung
So,
nakakabulol.
siguro mas maganda, isama nyo na dyan. So
Mhm.
that the other agencies will be properly informed na you, as the think tank, you will
Yes.
be providing the necessary advices, advisement.
Opo. Actually, interagency committees po ito na halos lahat ng agencies po natin
Pero you're the
kasama.
lead.
PSA po ang lead para dito sa indicator system, statistical. Of course, they are attached to NEDA.
Indicators
Yeah.
are barometers.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm saying is the creative part.
Okay.
So dapat siguro, yun, kaya sinabi ko yung bamboo,
Yes po.
sinabi ko yung PNR train, di ba? So it has to come from you, no? Para wala nang turuan, kayo yung creative.
Sige
Kayo
po.
yung nucleus,
Okay.
kayo yung core, kayo yung think tank.
Sige po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you rin po. Sige po.
Sa ano, yun let us know talaga kung saan mo isasaksak dyan, literally. Kasi that's
Opo.
what you have, this is your institutional organization eh.
Opo.
So,
Opo. We will present to you later the subcommittee that we are creating under the uh, Development Budget Coordinating Committee. Yun po ang ating proposal para po naka-align na rin po pag pinag-uusapan na po yung budget. Pag pinag-uusapan yung SDG interventions po natin, or what programs are needing greater assistance, kaya doon po namin propose na maging subcommittee po. And this is going to be tabled already in the next DBCC meeting, and hopefully they will already start organizing it. Kami pa rin po ang secretariat, but yes, we will take note, of course, of the recommendations para hindi
Creative
na...
secretariat.
Yes, thank you.
I can't help but really emphasize the importance of that eh. Kasi
Yes, sir.
otherwise note ka lang ng note eh.
Opo.
Note lang tayo ng note, and
Sige.
we really have to take it a step further.
Sige po. So, from this one, sige po, we will find a way for us to include already how we can input nga the recommendations already mentioned. And then, to continue on with monitoring, these are the indicators. There are 102 indicators.
Sorry, but just to belabor the point.
Yes po.
You know, if like let's say one of the cabinet secretaries for just out of the blue, let's say DOTR, no, is deciding between one type of major investment in transportation versus another.
Yes.
For me, dun talaga pumapasok yung creative thinking nyo, because
Yes.
then you'll weigh all these other factors for them. O ito, it's a locally produced product, so
Right.
therefore may value din kasi yung ano eh, yung Filipino pride eh, may value yon.
Opo.
And then the job generation, the use of otherwise what would be resources that baka natapon lang.
Mm-mm.
So sana
Kung
may
saan.
ganun sa process.
Sige po.
'Di ba? Na nakaka-intervene talaga kayo to say that, you know, if they're evaluating a project, I'll give you I think this is worth noting. This was my, I can't remember, intervention in one of my hearings a few weeks ago. well, actually, when I conducted the hearing, so I put this on the tables for the resource persons to remember. Um, in the search for more alternative modes of transportation, which I support, I filed the bill on sustainable transportation. One of the often recommended, and we've seen actual prototypes come up, is the reinventing of the jeep, no? So the e-jeep, right? Okay. So I'm a big proponent of that kasi it's less pollution on the ground, in the air, and vehicular pollution is one of the biggest contributors of pollution. But I noted that instead of supporting our own local jeepney industry, which is huge, may importation pa tayo ng jeep. So parang ako, bakit? I mean, hindi naman bawal, di ba? It's a free economy. Pero how come walang push to support our own jeepney industry? That's local manufacturing. This other type of jeep is purely imported, purely. And not only not only do we have a thriving local jeepney industry, but there's also arts and culture embedded in it, if you recall, no? In fact, ngayon, siguro, ewan ko, kung sa hirap ng panahon, papangit-pangit na ng mga jeep, di na inaabalang lagyan ng artistic work. Dati nung bata ako, doon ako natutuwa kasi, uy, ganun pala yung Laguna. Kasi doon nila, dinodrawing yung mga iba-ibang lugar. So I think I brought this up in the budget hearing of DepEd kasi sabi ko yung mga senior high natin, yung track ng arts, isang viable negosyo. Ngayon, pag namatay na yung jeepney industry, dahil nag-import na lang nag-import ng jeep, di sayang din yung arts and yung promotion ng arts and culture, sayang din yung job na magpe-painting yung mga bata. Doon ko feeling na you have to intervene. Because who else will call all of this information beyond past these hearings? Alam nga naman natin, ibabatas pa namin. 'Di ba? So I feel that's a very strong intervention where you can, and that's just one example of many. Yung example nga ni Senator Tolentino, meron na palang gumagawa ng local trains. Meron tayong mga byproducts of the coconut industry na pwedeng gamitin sa ganito, and so on and so forth. Okay? Mag-overtime talaga kayo ng staff nyo dun sa i-demand namin sa inyo na outcome. Pero I think it will be very rewarding work.
Still talking about the indicators, and which will be further explained also by the PSA. We have 155 indicators for initial monitoring out of the 200 plus global indicators. 102 indicators are classified as Tier 1. Just to explain, Tier 1 indicator are with baseline data, with methodology, and regularly generated by the Philippine Statistics Office. And then, Tier 2 is with methodology but not regularly generated. For example, child labor. We are still pushing that this be included already to be regularized. And then, Tier 3, there is no methodology at all, and it's not being generated. So there is a couple of indicators who are in Tier 3 yet. Example of Tier 3, ma'am.
Natin, I'm just curious.
These are the examples of Tier 2 indicators, Senator, for SDG 12. Material footprint per capita, domestic material consumption, global food loss index, national recycling rate, number of companies publishing sustainable reports.
Okay. No need na
These
for
are
all. Sorry. For all, give me, it's so interesting. So, what do you need to be able to complete that dun sa proxy and supplemental? Is it just not done? Is it a budget issue? This is so important.
Senator, for the proxy and supplemental indicators, actually, these are the agreed indicators that we're going to monitor because these are already produced by the different national government agencies.
Okay.
That's why we call them proxy and supplemental, because they are not the global indicators, but somehow they reflect the targets and the goals in
Yeah,
the
and
sustainable
basically
development
you've
goals.
identified that you need them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so yun nga, what
We are already
In the
monitoring
process.
this, ma'am.
okay. So
Yung sinasabi ni Ma'am yung sa Tier 3.
For the Tier 3, ma'am,
Yeah, sorry. Ano ba to? Si proxy at si supplemental are tier 2 and 3? Did I understand
No,
this graph?
ma'am.
They're all Tier 1.
This is all tier 1.
Yes.
Ito, sorry, I thought so, okay, hindi ko naintindihan. Kasi nakalagay tier 1. Pero ano yung binasa mo sa akin? Tier 3.
Just the definition po of how it's different
No, but I
from
mean yung
two.
binasa niya kanina is
Yung
tier
Tier
3.
3 po.
Oh, so yun
from
na yung
the
question
group.
ko.
Yes.
Why can't you get the information that you need in tier 2 and tier 3? Why don't you have it?
For Tier 2, ma'am, before I would answer that, we have the methodology, but these are not regularly
Yes,
generated
yes.
because not one survey or a census or even administrative data
Kaya
is
nga.
ready to monitor yet. What we need is for Tier 2, ma'am, we are already trying to incorporate questions in our existing surveys so we can generate them. Like the child
Okay,
labor, it's
do
a
you-
Tier 2.
To do it, do you need budget? Do you need people? I just need to know.
Okay, ma'am. Because in the localization of the SDGs, one of the rich source of information would be the CBMS. So, ma'am, the CBMS actually came after
CBMS?
community-based monitoring system.
I'm not good at remembering acronyms, and with all the committees I attend, even if I've heard it 10 times, you just have to repeat it, okay?
Sorry, yes,
So
thank
that
you,
I digest properly. Say it
Yeah.
again.
So the community-based monitoring system law has been approved this year, and the PSA is the lead agency. Unfortunately, ma'am, it came at a time it has been approved when the NEP for 2020 has already been approved. That's why I got this instruction from the National Statistician, Dr. Dennis Mapa, that to appeal to your good office, ma'am, to support
Ayan,
the
sige.
provision of
Okay
budget
na.
for the CBMS.
Okay na.
Thank
Yun
you.
lang tinatanong ko. So submit it and I will ask Senator Tolentino to support out of his own pocket. No, just joking. Sige na, okay, move on. Kasi importante
you.
yan eh. And may reason naman kung ba't hindi nasama. Lagay mo yon. Okay? Okay, let's move on,
Tier
please.
2 yun po. Yung Tier 3,
Oh, Tier 3 din.
gagawan pa lang po ng methodology.
Oh,
Hindi
and-
pa alam kung paano, kung survey or
Pero
census.
when you say gagawan, you have a team that will do that.
That, with PSA po.
Oh, so you have a team that will do that.
Yes.
So that does not need budget. That's their job to do that. Tama ba?
Yes po.
Or you need another team, basta kumpletuhin nyo lang,
Pag gagawin
okay?
na.
I cannot
Oo.
promise just
Yes
because
po.
I say submit. It doesn't mean I have the power to grant it.
Yes
So
po.
be reasonable with what you ask for because we have to prioritize, okay?
Yes. So Tier
Now, if you
2
tell
is,
me Tier 2 is
greater.
really, really important, si
Yes.
Tier 3, it can wait. But if we don't have to wait, if it's,
Right.
I mean, offhand, ilang millions ba yan to do that?
For the CBMS, ma'am, we need 100 million initially.
Okay, sige. Kaya ni Senator Tolentino yan. Okay.
So, yun lang po yung mga indicators natin under Tier 1 na may baselines na po at ginagawa na po ng gine-generate na po kung tutuusin. So, the next slide shows you how we integrate the indicators in the results matrices of the PDP. So, the results matrix or the matrices of the PDP already include the SDG targets. So, there are 68 indicators reflected in the results matrix. So, the 2030 target this is just an example. We have an entire document that is a companion document po of the PDP that already shows you this one. It includes the outcome and output indicators for monitoring the PDP, and then which were committed by the respective national government agencies through the consultation process that we undertake during the planning period. And then this include, of course, the targets prepared, and calculated by each of the respective sectoral agencies po. So ito po yung ating RM. Sa international reporting naman po of our performance on the SDGs, meron po tayong tinatawag na Voluntary National Review. The voluntary national reviews aim to facilitate the sharing of experiences, including successes, challenges, and lessons learned, with a view to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. It seeks to strengthen policies and institutions of governments and to mobilize multi-stakeholder support and partnership for the implementation of the SDGs. It is supposed to track the the progress in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So this is
Madam Chair,
yes po.
may I know from the NEDA, where is the venue for this VNR?
Sa
How
New
do-
York po, sa UN.
So, who is the one reporting?
Sa secretary po namin. He was the one who reported this year, last July, for the second voluntary national
And is
review.
there another venue wherein you report this? Aside from the United Nations, New York,
Sa New York po
whatever
wala.
office is
Oo.
that? The reason, Madam Chair,
Yes.
why I'm saying this is that apparently yesterday, and I have to inform likewise NEDA and this committee. Apparently yesterday, from the United Nations Human Rights Council based in Geneva, the special UN rapporteur, an Egyptian named Saad Al-Faragi,
Mhm.
commended and lauded the Philippine government for complying with several socio-economic accomplishments,
Yes,
notably in the field of Magna Carta for women, for the PWDs, IPs, our Pamana program, and other SGD goals. So I'm not saying that you're the one responsible for this, but what I'm saying is this. The recommendation of that Egyptian from Geneva is that the Philippine government should project positive accomplishments coming from the socio-economic commitments on human rights to to curtail the negative image coming from the critics. So, in effect, NEDA, if you will do that correctly, would be helping the national government, the Duterte administration, in projecting the right human rights image. Because we have done so much in terms of the Magna Carta for Women, PWDs, IPs, the Pamana program, the disaster management, etc., etc. And if it is correct that it came from your end, congratulations. Congratulations. And my recommendation is that if you VNR this, you furnish that United Nations Human Rights Agency in Geneva, because that's part also of our human rights commitment. Because human right is not just violations of physical space per se, but the human rights would include the right to water, the right to a decent standard of living, the right to an affordable home, gender initiatives, etc., etc. So, my suggestion, Madam Chair, dagdagan natin ng trabaho si NEDA, nagre-report kayo sa United Nations, Political Forum, blah, 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 furnish that UN Human Rights Agency in Geneva. Kasi kinampihan na tayo nitong Special Rapporteur, si Saad Al-Faragi yesterday sa Geneva. If you can do that, you've helped this government a lot. Madam Chair, thank you for that
Actually,
intervention.
Actually, habang binabatuhan kayo ng trabaho ni Senator Tolentino, I will make a statement na hindi niya alam, pwede niyo rin siyang batuhan ng trabaho. Because he is actually accompanying me to Geneva. So gusto niyo, kami na nang mag-hand deliver niyang report na yan sa kanila. That's an option. Magkalapit lang naman yung pupuntahan namin,
Yes.
WHO, and I'm very happy to hear this interjection. And I thought not knowing what he was about to say, I thought your direction was kahit sa Pilipinas dapat na-share tong information na to.
Yes.
No, because even our own critics don't even know this information, and even our own supporters would be happy to know. Like me, I'm always heartened to know that when we hear the good news, because alam niyo naman media tends to
Not
be
covered by the media, Madam
excited.
Chair.
No, but historically, di ba, ganun naman ang media. What sells is the bad news. But what I'd like to also include in the discussion, for the record, consistent with what Senator Tolentino was saying, in 2017, I accompanied my brother who was tasked by the President to present he was not yet DFA Secretary, but he was about to be appointed, to present our report on the UNIPR. And my brother asked me to be the one to present on the social social programs that we have in place to show that we are very much putting priorities in this. So I discussed the reproductive health law, which you all know that I sponsored. I discussed the focus on PWDs, etc. So we brought that to their attention. But yun nga sometimes the times and the combination of people are there, hindi nabibigyan ng attention yun. So I'm so happy to hear that in this forum naman na binanggit niya,
Madam Chair, we
napansin
have,
niya.
apparently may kakampi tayo rito. So, following the suggestion of our good chair, perhaps the NEDA can prepare that, not an aid memoir, but a folder which we can deliver by next week. If you can have that, all the accomplishments of the Duterte government relative to promotion of socio-economic, cultural, human, and political rights. We just had an elections. So lahat po yan. If you can have that, and we will be hand-carrying it to the Special Rapporteur Saad Al-Faragi, who apparently is supporting our cause. Kasi ang sabi niya, the reason why you are having a negative image is because you are not projecting the positive accomplishments. And we have a lot. And and all of this are within your database. So ma'am, pwede ba ho yun? In nice folderized form. Merong CD, o may uso pa ba ang CD, USB, yung maganda tingnan. So we can hand carry it. And with the right footnotes, kayang-kaya niya yun. Additional assignment for you. Anyway, may merienda na naman si Nerve.
Thank you rin po. Thank you, ma'am. Pero just to give you further information, we did have media briefings already, and we had a Ask NEDA media briefing last August on the VNR. Siguro lang hindi na published ng wider, and we still agree that we should, and we of course have all these reports in the website po. And we also have press releases. However, siguro tama rin po kayo, we have to reach out further.
And give us a
And
folder
localize
that
it.
give us a folder that includes the press releases.
Yes,
Kasi
po.
like, I have to admit, pag nagmamadali na, di at least mabasa ko man lang yung
Opo.
press release. So yung at least yung folder na yan will bring us up to speed. And then from then on, include nyo na kami dun sa
Yes,
mga
po.
ano.
Oo naman.
Ha? Okay.
Sige po. Regular member na po kami, di ba? Thank you po. Sige po. So, that was what was emphasized in yung kanina po, that yun ang VNR1 report in 2016. Yung 2019 VNR report po, meron po tayong hiningi po namin ang tulong ng PIDS para gawin yung makita or makakuha ng mga results po or yung ating mga accomplishment on the SDGs na highlighted for VNR number 2, which focused on SDG 4 on education, quality education. Yung emphasis was on quality. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal 10, reduce inequality. Goal 13, climate action. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. So before I proceed to show you the results of the VNR, wait lang. May we ask Ma'am Taguba to please present the PIDS process.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Honorable Senator. Just a brief background po dun sa role ng PIDS. So, in 2018, PIDS was commissioned by the UNICEF to assist NEDA in drafting what we call the Zero Draft and the Draft 1 of the Voluntary National Review for the Philippines on the SDGs. Since NEDA will be presenting the report, I will not duplicate that. What I will do instead is to provide or to share with you kung paano nangyari yung VNR process on PIDS as perspective. And I will also provide some broad recommendations from that paper that we submitted to NEDA. Next. So as I've mentioned earlier, PIDS collaborated with NEDA in the preparation of the VNR or the Voluntary National Review. PSA also helped us in terms of the data, and the study was commissioned by the UNICEF. And although we did not show here the different agencies, we also closely coordinated with them, especially the key implementing agencies of the specific goals of focus in the 2019 VNR. So this slide sort of sums up the phases of the review process. So phase one is basically the planning and institutionalization, like mapping the key stakeholders and listing the preliminary SDG indicators. This phase was already conducted prior to our engagement in the project, and I think PSA was the lead agency in this particular activity. Phase two is the identification of numerical targets, which we needed in terms of benchmarking the current performance of the country. This was led by NEDA and validated by different stakeholders in a workshop that PIDS conducted in November of 2018. Phase 3 is the gathering of inputs and data, which is the core task of the PIDS team. And then in phase 4, we wrote the report and conducted various consultations. And lastly, phase 5 is the presentation of the report by country representatives in the high-level political forum. In terms of the analysis, we were guided by various PIDS studies that are related to the SDGs. Apparently, there are quite a lot of them, and so we used them. We also complemented the SDG indicators with other available data. And we also collected data from other agencies. In many of our consultations, we also requested information from civil society organizations, whether they can share some data that they collected on the ground. But unfortunately, we did not get any. But you would like to highlight that we did that. We requested them to do it. Next, please. We encountered some challenges when we were drafting the report. But the most important of these is the lack of disaggregated data. The SDGs tagline is to leave no one behind. However, we could not examine how we were doing in terms of the different segments of the society simply because we lack granularity in the information. That is why we recommended that we upgrade our statistical databases so that we can get better and more detailed information for purposes of program and policy decision making to ensure that indeed we are not leaving anyone behind. From this table, you can see that we still have a lot of SDG indicators that do not have this aggregation by sex, by income, by status in terms of disability, and even by geographic location. Next, please. So in terms of consultation, we just want to share that the VNR process was consultative and participatory. We conducted regional, although in selected regions, we visited one region each in the three main islands. We went to Clark for Luzon, we went to Davao for Mindanao, and Cebu for Visayas. We also had one in NCR. We also had consultations with specific government agencies like DepEd and the Department of Labor and Employment through the tripartite consultations which it facilitated. We also had an interesting workshop with children, care of the UNICEF, then with civil society organizations in Visayas, and we also got one invitation to present from the Regional Development Council of Region 11. Throughout the drafting of the VNR, we collaborated with various government agencies for purposes of getting their inputs, data, and even programs for achieving the SDGs. Next, please. So now, just very briefly, without preempting the presentation of NEDA, because later on they will have a full presentation of the report, we just want to highlight the recommendations that we provided in that report that we submitted to NEDA. First, to sustain the current pace of economic development, the government must address the wide disparities across subnational regions. Development remains highly concentrated in the NCR and its neighboring suburban areas like Calabarzon and Central Luzon. The national government has laid out plans for heavily investing in infrastructure to improve connectivity across the country that are ultimately meant to narrow the regional development gaps. We find this very essential. Second, the government must make a clear plan of action to improve the status of BARMM. This region is lagging in many socioeconomic dimensions. With the Bangsamoro Organic Law, the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region will have a political structure that is different from all other regions in the country. Therefore, the national government must proactively reach out and foster collaboration with the new BARMM government for the implementation of effective interventions, taking into account the varying cultures that characterize this region. Prioritizing areas and locations that are lagging in terms of the SDGs present a concrete mechanism for carrying out the leaving no one behind agenda. The entire educational system, basic, tertiary, technical, vocational, must also collaborate and work in synergy to develop interventions that will account for the disruptions caused by more use of emerging technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. The DepEd, CHED, and TESDA must equip the future workforce with future skills that are required by a rapidly changing and high technology economy. Furthermore, interventions must be upgraded to improve both formal education and non-formal education. Lastly, efforts are needed to arrest, sorry, this is number 4, sorry, next. No, sorry, that's um so efforts are needed to arrest the downward trend in the labor force participation rate and to improve labor force participation of women. For the latter, it is important to recognize the value of women's work, whether at home or in paid market. As pointed out by another study at PIDS, women who are economically inactive may not be willing to enter or re-enter the labor force because a loss to the household may be greater than the gains from her unpaid employment. As I've mentioned a while ago, for the problem of disaggregated data, the statistical system must work together towards the production of disaggregated data for as many indicators as possible to enable more effective monitoring of progress in the SDGs. These aggregated data are needed to uncover disparities, if any, by ethnicity, age, gender, disability status, migration status, and other relevant groupings. Without such data, it would be difficult to design and implement policies and programs to address equity issues and ensure no one is left behind. Lastly, an integrative approach that accounts for the interconnections of the SDGs and the transformative nature of the global goals must be implemented. While each of the government agencies has its own interventions for achieving the relevant global goals, there must be an effective collaboration among all SDG stakeholders, ensuring coherence and efficiency and removing unnecessary duplication in these efforts. Improving the quality of educational services is essential in the development of skills and talents of the workforce, but this must be complemented with concerted efforts to link the educational sector with the industry to ensure that the former is building up a labor force that can address the demands of the latter. Human capital development and industry development should be tightly connected with efforts to reduce poverty and inequality, while social protection must also be enhanced. A more sustainable approach to uplift the lives of the poor is to create the environment that will create and expand decent jobs and employment for all. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Submit that, no, I have to tell you that it's very interesting, but and each point you made is well taken, but it's a kind of thing that we need to look at carefully. Yeah, medyo mahirap siyang i-digest all at once, so
Yes, ma'am. The
yeah,
report, ma'am,
better
sorry,
to
sorry po.
submit that. Yeah.
It's 200-page report,
Oh.
so we just try to.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's
Yes.
what I mean. But even in for future reference, because a lot of you will be coming back here,
Yes.
it's a bit technical at our level. So and we don't need the 200-page, but that part you can submit that.
Yes.
So kasi sobrang relevant naman pero medyo mahirap lang
Yes,
at the
ma'am.
pace we're
Yes,
ano.
Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Sige, and
Chair.
my staff has given me a time check lang din kasi.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before I
Sen.
leave,
Sure.
relative to the recent presentation, who's gonna make the BARMM action plan? Because we're now going into SGT goal number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies. Is it NEDA? Or is there a BARMM NEDA?
Wala pa po.
So kayo rin yon.
Sa ngayon po, task force po ang kinakausap natin.
No. Sino yung gagawa nung action plan?
Si tayo.
Kayo yon, di ba?
Opo, meron daw, sorry.
So when can we
Task
see?
force.
Can we have a glimpse of that plan? Because I'm going to have a BARM oversight hearing.
Sige po. We will
Kahit
provide you a
draft
copy.
lang, kahit
Yes
draft
po.
lang. Can you provide me a copy?
Oo.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you rin po. Tapos, bago ka umalis po, baka gusto niyo makita yung video na pinresent po ni Secretary Pernia. Yun na po ang last ng aking presentation.
Sige.
Tapos, yung
Is
last
he going to
slide,
sing or ano?
no, it's
Oh. Sige,
going to
sige, go
dance.
ahead.
Joke lang po. Thank you. Okay po. And the last slide is the website po, where we will see all the SDG reports po.
Okay, thank you. So, the next person I'll call on is kayo ba? Okay, Miss Luisa Holongbayan, UNDP.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. So I'm representing UNDP in the Philippines, and with me is Mr. Andrew Parker, our senior advisor and economist. We're presenting on behalf of Titon Mitra, our resident representative. All right. Um, Thank you, ma'am. So we can proceed to the next slide. Um, so I'm presenting to you the 17 goals, which is now a part of the tasks that all UN agencies would have to support. So I'm here as UNDP, but also representing the rest of UN in the Philippines. So we have received a call for all UN agencies, funds, programs, and technical agencies to reflect their contributions in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in our strategic plans and country program documents. So from our global headquarters down to country offices in more than 170 countries in the world, we are supposed to assist um, governments, particularly in the implementation of the SDGs. So, how is that? We're providing country-led and country and context-specific services and solutions, reaching the last mile, and ensuring inclusiveness and gender equality, and promoting rights-based approaches. I just want to go back to the outcome document of um, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Most of us would see this as the sustainable develop would call this as the Sustainable Development Goals, but that is the outcome document that all 192 member states of the UN agreed to in September 2015. So at the heart of that document is the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals, the 169 targets, and the 232 indicators. But along with the goals, targets, and indicators is the vision, a very ambitious vision, as well as the principles as reflected in the declaration for 2030, for the 2030 agenda. So the vision is very ambitious, and to sum it up in the words of the Secretary General, the vision really is for us to be the first generation to end poverty and the last generation to end climate change. So that's a very ambitious vision, and it encompasses the 17 goals in order to achieve that. Aside from the vision, I've also written down the principles of the Sustainable Development Goals. And these are national ownership, and that's why we said that we are supporting country-led and context-specific implementation. It also calls for a very highly participatory approach to crafting the targets for the country, as well as in implementation and in monitoring and in reporting. The goals and the vision is universal. It's for all countries, everyone, everywhere. It's human rights based. When you take a look at most of the goals, it says no poverty, quality education for all, decent work for all, decent housing for all, water and sanitation for all, because as Senator Tolentino mentioned earlier, human rights also encompasses economic, social, cultural, political rights. So these are embodied in the 17 goals as well. The goals are also very integrated and interconnected, as presented by Director Daraway earlier, that we cannot and should not see the goals as 17 independent goals, 169 independent targets, but rather to achieve the vision and the ambition of the goals, we need to take a look at these as interconnected in a way that we will not be able to achieve one without providing the enabling environment also for the other goals to be achieved. The document, the outcome document also lays down implementation, means of implementation, which means that in order to achieve the goals, we will need to also identify what are the financing needs for the goals. How do we encourage technology transfer, either through South-South cooperation, working with other countries, working with multilateral organizations for a triangular cooperation, and other forms of partnerships in order to achieve the goals. It therefore recognizes that countries will not be able to achieve the goals on their own. Government will also, is not just the implementer for the goals, but as again mentioned earlier by Director Darawa, it's a whole of society, all actors and stakeholders are in it, are in this frame as well. The monitoring and reporting provided for by Director Daraway and our colleague from PIDS is part of the follow-up and review. So it's not just the statistical authorities that are part of the follow-up and review. In the document, it also provides for parliamentarians to be part of the follow-up and review. The state audit institutions are also part of the follow-up and review. And if you would take a look at the COA website, COA also has a report on the implementation progress of the SDGs in the Philippines. So all these are embedded in the outcome document of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. So I will just quickly go through how is this reflected. Again, Director Maria has presented this already, that the Philippines is one of the first to report in the 2016 Voluntary National Review, has presented its implementation plan for the SDGs, and just July this year presented its second VNR. The Philippines is also considered in the Asia and the Pacific region as a best practice country in terms of integrating the SDGs in national development planning, as presented here, that the pillars of the PDP, the pillars and the chapters of the PDP have already identified alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. It is also recognized in terms of using community-based monitoring systems or household level data in terms of providing data for local level SDG progress. In fact, there are two local government units who have, as far as we know, who have already presented, who have already crafted their local SDG progress reports. That's Panabos City as well as the municipality of Carmona. And that was done with the CBMS network. At the provincial level, there are mainstreaming workshops already being done, and 16 provinces have also already started to do that. Next slide, please. When we translate it to how UNDP supports the Philippines in terms of SDG implementation, our country program, which is our basis for existence here in the Philippines, as well as the basis for our support to the country, for government and for other stakeholders, we are aligned with the 5 pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you take a look at the SDGs, the 17, you can also cluster them according to the 5 Ps of the SDGs. So our work is aligned to people through our institutions and SDG partnerships, where we envision strengthened capacities of governments and other institutions to plan, manage, and deliver quality social services as well as economic services. Our work on climate action is embedded in Planet and Prosperity, where we help governments transition to low carbon and climate resilient development. This is where our work on, for example, preparing the government to submit its first Green Climate Fund proposal, our work with the Climate Change Commission in terms of low carbon emissions, in terms of updating the National Climate Change Action Plan, and in terms of drafting or completing the nationally determined contributions of the Philippines. Our work on peace envisions that the key drivers of conflict and risk to stability are addressed, and we are working closely with OPAP as well as the BARMM transition government in order to achieve this. We will not be able to do this without partnerships, and we have done so with government, with civil society organizations, including youth groups and the academe and the private sector. Next slide, please. Our support to government and other key actors on the Sustainable Development Goals actually start from our support to government on the MDGs, and we've enumerated them. This is not a comprehensive list of our support, and this actually should be complemented with the rest of the UN agency support from the MDGs to the SDGs. So in terms of mainstreaming in subnational and local planning, as I mentioned, we are working with provincial governments as well as local governments and the national government agencies in terms of mainstreaming the SDGs in planning and programming. We're supporting SDG implementation in government departments. I've mentioned several agencies, the Climate Change Commission, NEDA, the DENR, among many others. We're doing rounds of public advocacy to increase awareness and knowledge on the SDGs, And we've been doing this with youth groups, with the academe, and with the private sector, as well as other government departments, both at the national and um, subnational levels. We've assisted in the preparation of the first voluntary national review that NEDA presented in 2016, as well as in 2019, but focusing on other sectors such as civil society organizations as well as the private sector. So with a big push from our headquarters to engage the private sector in the implementation of the SDGs, we have started in 2015. SDGs is our biz, which is also thankfully in NEDA's video as well, as part of partnerships. This is the next slide. So with a document that we published in 2017 with the Philippine Business for Environment, as well as supported by the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability and other private sector associations and organizations, we have identified 139 initiatives of 75 companies that contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. Surprisingly, while not all of the 75 reported voluntarily, we had to take a look at their sustainability reports, for example, and other published public documents. Most of them are core business, which reveals a lot that sustainable development or that sustainable development is not just a corporate social responsibility contribution. A number of our private sector companies have already started to recognize that they need to transform their core business in order to contribute to sustainability, to the Sustainable Development Goals. We're producing another round, another version of transformational business, Philippine private sector contribution to the goals within the year, again working with the Philippine Business for Environment. Following this report, Transformational Business, we've also highlighted some of the other work that are offshoots of this document, and a few things that I would like to highlight is the Business Advisory Council, for example, which is composed of UNDP with Philippine Business for Environment, Makati Business Club, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Philippine Business for Social Progress. So a number of private sector associations and networks have come together to discuss not just how to report and what to report, but also to identify the gaps or the pain points in terms of achieving, in terms of contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as addressing the challenges. We're happy to note that a few months earlier, the Business Advisory Council sat down with NEDA and DTI to pin down on several challenges in terms of implementation and contribution of the private sector for the Sustainable Development Goals. Other work are also underway, and we'd be happy to share these with you as they are finalized. So I guess that would be the second to the last of my slide. I'm wrapping up. So in terms of new ways of working, understanding that UNDP in the Philippines would have to work in different ways compared to our previous program support to the government and other key stakeholders. We are focusing not just on funding, but on financing. So we're developing we're identifying other forms of financing for the SDGs. Also identifying new solutions to all development problems, making sure that we reach the furthest first, and leave no one behind, and provide platforms for integration, not just on data, but also for spaces um, to come together. So as the last slide, and one of the new ways of working of UNDP, um, we're introducing the Accelerator Lab Network. So when Senator Tolentino earlier was asking about, let's come up with innovations, where is that creativity? We're offering the Accelerator Lab of UNDP in the Philippines as one of the 60 accelerator labs across the world as a large and fast learning network for development challenges. We acknowledge that the pace, the volatility, the uncertainty of development challenges is just too fast, and our solutions, the way that we come up with it, is not as fast enough. So the Accelerator Lab will try to run as fast as that by building on grassroots solutions and creating portfolios of experiments and to quickly learn so that these experiments can be replicated and potentially provide solutions that will create development impact. That's my last slide, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. My question was basically sort of, I guess, answered by your last slide, because I was going to ask that in everything that you said, how does UN consolidate all the information and learnings that you have access to information you have globally? How do you make it relevant to the Philippines? So is this the answer? And assuming it is, because it is what it is, I got it. But similar to my challenge to NEDA, how can we maximize the wealth of information you have, access to information that you have, and use it to encourage, or to not just encourage, but to systematize that exchange of information and that action among different agencies. I didn't really hear you touch on that. Like, obviously, you're just there in an advisory capacity, but like, what are the best practices out there and other parts of the world where you've seen them work together? Like, do they have departments in their government that is solely focused on sustainability? How do they work together? Do they create 100 interdepartment task agencies? How does it work? And I just need a very short reply, and then maybe we can go into this longer, just because I'm on a very tight schedule. Yeah, just a quick reply.
So very different examples in different countries. Other countries would have set up an SDG committee, which is along the lines of what NEDA is envisioning
Okay.
as well. And it encompasses the whole of government, and it's under either the Prime Minister's office or the President's office. The Accelerator Lab is just one of the offers of the
Yeah.
UNDP. Other offers are country platforms where the integration coming together physically in a safe space, so that solutions and all the best practices can be discussed. But we're also very willing to share if there are issues on very specific issues. The Accelerator Lab is one of those platforms that is being offered in the country, and I guess we can have a separate presentation
Yeah.
on the full offer of the Accelerator Lab for the Philippines.
Okay. Sige, we'll do that. I'm very interested in hearing about that. So maybe you could share more also on the best practices that you were talking about, like the SDGs that are directly under the Office of the President, so that we can also ask NEDA, their impact, and we can have a small group discussions. I think from what I'm seeing is that small group discussions might be might be another way of moving forward, no, because it's very broad. Unfortunately, I don't have time to give all of you the floor now, but I do want to acknowledge your presence. So let me just read from the guest list so that at least you know that we do value the time that you've given us. Um, Yeah, so Miss Gillian spoke briefly earlier, but I know you have a presentation, so I'll let you do that presentation next time from PSA. And then Attorney Capones, is that you? Sorry, that's you. Okay. Attorney Capones, BCDA. Na-move kasi yung ano eh. Kasi sabi ko parang naiba. Um, yeah, actually, I really wanted your President Vince Dizon to present on New Clark City for Sustainable City. No? So we don't want to rush your presentations and your explanations, so we'll call on you next time. Mr. Jules Giang, is that correct? Youth Force in the Philippines. Very briefly in one sentence, what do you do? Or two sentences?
Ma'am,
That's
we
very
work
broad.
closely with the UNDP.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
We're
Okay.
like one of the youth arms to mainstream the SDGs to the grassroots.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'll take off from there. I'll still introduce the others, but can you, if you have position papers, can you give it so that my commitment is to read through that so that when we sit down again, if it's just going to be me, if there's no other senator who comes anyway, then I can just dive into the areas of interest that I want to prioritize after reading, you know, so you prioritize what you do, what you want to bring to our attention, and then I'll go over it, and then I can just quickly ask my questions from there. No, because usually we're a little bit more efficient in my other hearings because I know the people, and there's usually just one general topic, and this is like really very broad. No, so the first few sessions will get to know each other better. So Dr. Lansigan of UPLB Climate Risk Study Center, I suppose you'll be able to give us a picture of our situation next time, but not now. So this would be for Philippines and the region. And I'm just like thinking off the top of my head what I'd like to hear, recommendations, and the current work you're doing with the other agencies. That will always be an integral part of these discussions. I don't want to just hear what your particular groups are doing. I'll always want to know what you are doing with other agencies of government, other groups, because that's what the SDGs are all about, no? So we'll do that. But do you have a position paper already? Okay, so maybe if you could give that beforehand. The next hearing will be around, I'm going to the WHO in Geneva mid-October. So when I come back around between the 19th to the 24th, something like that. But my staff will update you unless I can afford to have one before I leave, which would be about 3, 4, 5. So we will let you know. Thank you. And then Dr. Domingo Angeles, Interdisciplinary Study Center on Food Security. May I know if you've actually presented separately with the other committees here? No, okay. So we're very happy to hear your presentation. And then, like I said, reminder to how it links to the others because it may. I'm many times embarrassingly surprised that I didn't realize that there's a link to something else. No, so that's what I want to hear. I was I'm taking this course on SDGs actually online, and it was very interesting to me that on the issue of food security, water, water, the 70% of the is that also the figure you have? 70% of our water goes to production, agriculture, and so I'm familiar. I'm not an expert. I'm familiar with the issues that we take up on agriculture here, and of course, we're concerned about water scarcity because of the season changing, climate change. But I don't think we're tackling it from the perspective of long-term availability of water supply. I'm not aware, and again, it's not my expertise. I may just be ignorant about it. I'm not aware that we've tackled agriculture from that perspective, like looking down the road 20 years from now, 50 years from now, do we have enough water to continue farming the way we farm? So, yun yung questions ko. Kaya I was curious to know if you attend those hearings, just because I'd love to bring to the discussion those who attend those hearings to also enlighten us, whether it's in the House, in the Senate, or other hearings by DA, etc. Baka we can invite. But that will be somewhat of a subcommittee. It's just that I don't want to isolate the others because that's the whole point. Now, we want everybody here. So what I'll do is I'll also ask you to talk to my staff and be sure that we know what are the other goals that are affected by the key goal that you're mentioning, so that for the particular discussion you're going to have, we want to be sure that there's a representative from the government agency who's there. Okay, so kung food lang, like kayo sana overview lang, pero by the time I give you the floor sana, nandiyan na rin yung iba. So like DA. Yeah. Okay. Sige, quick response lang po.
Actually, ma'am, we have a UPLB interdisciplinary study center on water management.
Okay.
And currently, we are implementing a project funded by DA BAR on water footprint.
Okay, sige, invite din natin yan.
So,
They
sige
were
po,
invited,
amin-
nag-regrets daw po sila. So,
amin pong gagawa ng
sige.
write-up. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you can also ask them, we'll also write them to give us a position paper so that we can try to put it together, okay? And then, siguro, Director, I'll ask my staff to work with you na lang how to prioritize the discussions. Kasi yung idea ko is once a week meron para, you know, in 6 weeks, parang medyo yung wealth of information, at least sa akin, on my part, makonsolidate ko, and then we can help decide where the priorities are. So, I'd like to also acknowledge Director Bonar Laureto of the Philippine Business for the Environment. So, you are a group of different companies, no? Are these mostly the publicly listed companies, big companies? Yeah, that's what I also thought. So you'll talk about the initiatives that you've been doing, and these are directly related to SDGs. Okay, sige. Do you want to make a very quick statement?
Yes, thank you, Senator. PB has just rebranded. We're now called Business for Sustainable Development.
Oh, wonderful.
And
okay.
we've expanded
Sige.
from
So,
just
mas
environment.
maiimbita ka with that kind of name. Kasi
Thank you.
otherwise, dun ka lang sa environmental issues maiimbita.
Right.
That sounds better.
So our mandate is really to help businesses embed sustainability
Okay.
into their core business and not the philanthropic side,
Okay, wonderful.
but the strategy to deliver value and contribute to
Perfect.
17 SDGs.
So what I'd like for you to do, aside from the general focus of your group, is give me examples of what that is. Like, what would a company that has sustainable development integrated into their core values, what is
Sure.
that? What does that look like? And the other question I have for you is, my staff just informed me that the SEC requirement report on sustainability is 40 pages long. And I really
That's
don't have time to read something 40 pages long. That's just one aspect of the work I do. So I wanted your comment eventually at some point is, ganun ba ka-sustainable yung report na yon? Ganun ba ka-efficient yon? 40 pages? Parang, whoa. And is that a requirement for all companies? 'Cause
Thank you, Madam Senator. You're on point, and we also recognize that.
seen it but the fact na sinabing 40 pages yon, parang na-overtake na yata ni sustainability yung core business niya. Yung GIS is 2 pages.
Just to be transparent also, we helped SEC draft that guidelines on how companies should report on sustainability.
If it turns out it takes 4 minutes to answer that I'm okay, because that also has to do with our, our anti-red tape. 40 pages? Wow.
But the topic of sustainability is really broad, and
I
it
know.
doesn't just cover their operations, but really it covers the entire, even the core business, even the profitability of it.
Okay, but that might be asking a little bit too much of somebody who launched a business selling baseball caps. Diba? Diba? Uso na yan ngayon, diba? Whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm belaboring the point. I'll take a look at that 40 pages and then let's have this discussion later.
We'll be happy to also to provide
Okay.
an overview
Sige,
to you
thank you.
if you have the time.
Okay. And next is Napoleon Juanillo of Institute of Research, Innovation, and Scholarship. Ba? Okay. Yes. Former CHED.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Senator. Yes, we are a group of a private think tank of scientists and engineers and mathematicians advising government and higher education institutions on programming their curricula on STEM and also advising government on how the best way forward in terms of the innovation culture in the Philippines.
Wonderful. Thank you. So please, all of you, please come back. Okay, I really and some of you, I really need to sit down with separately because a hearing on realistically is 2 to 3 hours long, so we really can't go in depth. But I'm happy to at least meet all of you. Mr. Mark Jacinto, are you all together? Mr. Mark Jacinto, Mr. CJ Dicano, and Mr. Joyo Soriano, all of the 2030 project.
So basically, the 2030 project is a nonprofit, youth-led, and sustainable development, advocating for sustainable development. So basically, every one of us who volunteers in the 2030 project are students and full-time workers. So basically, the 2030 project is created to vent out our advocacies aligned with the sustainable development goals. Actually, we have projects already that are gathering data and researches given by the youth itself. So basically, we pioneered the 17 youth champions, which is every SDGs, we have youth champions. Say, for example, in Mindanao, we have a youth champion for SDG number 16. He advocates for this sustainable development goals. Every one of them has their own stories. Say, for example, education, poverty, climate change. So that's what we do. We activate heroes, everyday heroes in their own communities.
So I'm sure you have your social media pages, so please
Yes.
write, well, you can say it, but
Yes.
write it down, give it to me so I can follow you and I can promote. Ikaw yung pinakabata dito, so ikaw yung inassume ko na may ganon. But there's also Jolly Torrelia of Shelter Rights Workers Group. So just one sentence, 2 sentences of what you do.
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm representing Community of Yolanda Survivors and Partners. This is an alliance of 163 local organizations along 4 regions and 11 provinces of
Okay.
Yolanda Corridor.
Okay.
So I'm already happy, Madam Chair, to submit to you
Thank you.
our initial analysis of SGD
Okay.
in relation to Yolanda. So we will be happier if you will read it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In an effort to be the inspiration on sustainability here, and my staff might kill me if I haven't. I just thought of it when you showed me that paper. They can send it by email, right? Yeah. Okay. So you can send it by email. If for whatever reason we need it printed, and I have to admit I cannot read voluminous documents online yet through the laptop yet. I can only do that for short articles. I personally don't mind if you write it on newsprint. It's more sustainable than bond paper that has to be bleached and everything. Okay lang ba sa inyo yun? I was about to say kasi na kahit scrap paper, pero baka malito naman kami kung ano, hindi na namin alam kung ano yung harap at ano yung likod. So siguro wag na muna yon. Ano na lang. Okay, anyway, sige, thank you for that. I've called on everyone. I really appreciate the time that you took to come here, and please await further notice. But yeah, I think short discussions might be very effective, and maybe joint hearings with other committees insofar as the time, also the schedule of the other senators are concerned. Thank you very much for your time. You're welcome to stay if you want to hear about taxation. This session is just suspended. Thank you so much. Sige.
Guys, sorry. There will be a press con right after, so you will see media coming in. Don't mind them lang po ha. Thank you.